Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Buddham dhammang sanghang namassami. Well, dear friends, I would like to dedicate one of our members who has fallen into illness in the past day or two. I don't have any permission to give details, but just remembering how this body is subject to the calamity of serious illness. Whatever way we get adjusted to the state of the body, it's never completely satisfactory, but you could say that from day to day, the chronic shortcomings of the body, we get used to those and somehow adjust the mind. And then every once in a while, change happens. I don't know if you can remember before you became so well established in the Dhamma that it could happen sometimes that things that happen to us would strike like a tremendous calamity, a huge disaster. I can remember when I was much, much younger, another person close to me was in the last weeks of life. And at that time, I spent a lot of time sitting in the hospital or sitting at the bedside. And I was reading the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And, you know, there's it's like sort of like a tremendous earth-shaking, massive, monumental disaster, the encounter of good and evil, this tremendous archetypal encounter that was written in those fiction books, and somehow or other, it seemed like coming up to the end of life. So wow, that's like the biggest drama of all. Even though we kind of logically know that everybody has an end, nevertheless, sometimes when we encounter the impermanence of things in life and our mind has not yet gotten used to it, not yet gotten accustomed to it, then we can have that experience of seeing it like a calamity. I have been saying with something about dukkha recently that was sort of on the theory that dukkha is kind of like a mistake, that dukkha arises because of craving. And when one lets go of craving, one comes to the cessation of dukkha. So, in particular, craving for existence, our craving for sensual desire, our craving for the freedom from danger. So then, when we've had a kind of like a happy life of a mature meditator, practitioner who's got meditation, who's got a little bit of wisdom put together, and who has gained their at least their basic right view, and begun to practice a kind of mature ethics that keeps them out of the unskillful states, unskillful situations, and begin to learn how to purify the mind of negative habits of the mind, self-damaging habits of the mind, learning to let go of, some of the poisons. Then we have this sort of this happy life, don't we? But it could be that from time to time something happens, and the stability that we've gained could be thrown off, could be turned upside down, and a person could fall into, it's like those old states. I thought I said goodbye to those states many years ago, but then I find the mind obsessing about something, being dissatisfied with something, being anxious, or having some kind of a emotional response like that. And so my theory that I had mentioned a few times about dukkha was that when after we've gone some distance along our path of practice, along this gradual training, when we experience dukkha, that's a signal that there is something going on, that we are still clinging to something. And the pang of suffering is a wake-up call to look more deeply, more carefully, and to understand what it is we're clinging to. And then, having understood it, then we have to let it go. And if we don't know how to let it go, we've got to find out how to let it go. There's another passage that is sort of coming at the same point, but it's a little bit more dark, frightening. This may be a passage that, if you happen to come across it in your sutta reading, you will like to skip over this sentence, because the sentence is too difficult to take it on board. It's in several different places. The one I'm reading to now is in the Jhana Sutta, which is 9.36 in the Anguttara Nikaya, and this is referring to a person who's developed the four jhanas, and then developed the immaterial meditations, and contemplating from either within or emerging from those meditations, contemplating these five aggregates: form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness. Or if they are practicing the immaterial meditation, they don't need to contemplate about form, because they've set that to the side, and they could simply contemplate feeling, perception, volitional formations, or formations and consciousness. And the sentence is, they contemplate the phenomena there, included in feeling, perception, choices, and consciousness, that is to say, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, that's sometimes called mental formations or volitional formations. Bhante Sujata translates as choices, and consciousness, that's Vijnana. Contemplate these as impermanent, as suffering, as diseased, as a boil, as a dart, as misery, as an affliction, as alien, as falling apart, as empty, as not self. They turn their mind away from those things and apply it to the deathless. That's the deathless element. With the thought, this is peaceful, this is sublime. That is the stilling of all activities. That's all sankhara, all formations. The stilling of all activities, the letting go of all attachments, the ending of craving, fading away, cessation, nibbāna. Well, the second sentence, I love it very much. I even have it on my Facebook page as a sort of a nice script version of that statement. This is peaceful, this is sublime, the stilling of all activities, letting go of all attachments, the ending of craving, fading away, cessation, nibbāna. So we love to think about that one. But we don't much love to think about that it's all impermanent suffering, disease, a boil, a dart, a misery, an affliction, alien, falling apart, empty, and not self. Those 11 qualities are an elaboration of the 3 characteristics of conditional existence. So a nature that's impermanent. And then under suffering, it says suffering, a disease, a tumor, a barb, a calamity, and an affliction. Those are all different words, different aspects of dukkha. I think that this phrase is a really powerful teaching to shock us out of getting to be apathetic towards dukkha. Dukkha is the first noble truth, and so, we're sort of like aware of dukkha in every day in many different ways. We can contemplate dukkha, so, that's dukkha, and then we can feel, in a way, not disturbed, not upset, not weeping and wailing, not, getting all agitated just because it's dukkha. We could just relax and say, oh, it's dukkha. The Buddha was right. All conditioned things have that quality of dukkha. And so, in that way, one can sort of like know about dukkha without feeling disturbed by dukkha. But then thinking of it as being this calamity, this affliction, this a boil. I think a boil is something that's really disgusting that happens on the body, and it's it's painful and you don't want to lance it, and if you do lance it, if you're not very careful, it could get infected. It's really, it's gross, So a misery and affliction. So then the reason I think why we get this strong feeling is this strong language in a sutta is so that we don't become apathetic or lazy until we reach the goal. We don't want to fall into the trap and say, well, my life is pretty good now. I can just put up with the little bit of dukkha that comes along. I can get used to it, or something like that. So this is to create that urgency. And then the three synonyms given for not self are alien, empty, and not self. The word for which is translated in by Bhante Sujato as alien, is translated elsewhere as falling apart. No, as alien, affliction, alien. Parato, okay. Alien, falling apart, empty and not self. So these five khandhas, even when we have given up about the doctrine of the self, we no longer buy into the story. These five khandhas are telling us this story about the self. The five khandhas are saying, this is me, it needs to be protected, it needs to be taken care of, and it needs to be protected. All of the things that all together and one by one, it adds up to what one identifies with the self. So once we get partway down this path of training, we know, and we can contemplate and reflect, no, it's not me, this is just a process that's going on. It's just a flow. Because of causes and conditions, these things are going on. This body is here. These different feelings arise. Now it's pleasant, now it's unpleasant. And it's just a feeling. I'm not worried about it. It's just, I have a perception. Oh, that's my friend. That's a stranger. That's a lovable person. That's a difficult person. Those are just perceptions. I'm not worried and disturbed. I just know that mind is just making up those perceptions. And it's something that the mind is doing. And I can't stop it, but I don't identify with it. And then the intentions say, well, yes, we do things on purpose. I intentionally looked up something to speak about tonight. I intentionally came down and prepared to give this Dhamma talk this evening. So we know, okay, intention is part of the package. It's something that the mind does. We just try to have a caution not to be acting with the kind of intention that's taking us onto the next life. We try to let go of that kind of intention, which is longing for eternity, or longing for status, longing for some kind of a stability in our existence as a self. But you see, like in this way, like what I'm saying, this is like the smug way of getting along with the five khandhas. It's like, you're in this, I guess, part of your job is that you're on a committee, and the committee has meetings, and you're obliged to attend the meetings of the committee and listen to the people in the committee that keep yammering on and on about the same topics over and over again. And it's even like it's a committee meeting that never stops. Maybe in our modern age, the people on your committee, they keep sending you messages through your device, and you can never get away from them. They're constantly having at you, and you're just saying, okay, it's just a committee. I don't identify with it, but you're not like, if you thought, oh, there's a bunch of aliens, I have to be on a committee with a bunch of aliens, then you should be like really, really scared. You should really say, well, I do not wish to be associated with this committee. And standing on that, turn towards the deathless. So it seems like this verse is telling us not to be smug, but to develop some urgency. And yes, it's true, when the mind falls into the suffering of some kind of unskillful attachment, the suffering that you feel is a wonderful way to know that you've got some work to do, that you've got to take care of that. And whenever we let go of one specific attachment to that extent, that's one specific unit of dukkha that actually could be gone forever. Especially when we get into the level where we've attained any kind of the path and fruits, beginning at stream entry path, that there can be pieces that can actually really be let go along the way. And we could have a glimpse of what it might be like when the time comes that the stilling of those volitional formations that are taking us on to rebirth, that those formations are actually finished, that the attachments to any kind of identity at all is fully released. The tanha is finished. We experience that viraga, that fading away of any kind of a delusion of a self in the five khandhas. We experience the cessation of dukkha. One can contemplate this long before we can finally realize it. We can at least know that we have a teacher who gave us these metaphors and these words to point the way towards what it will be like, and that then by this contemplation can become the inclination of our hearts to go towards that, not to go away from that, and not to stop halfway through. And let's sit for a bit of meditation now. Dear friends, I am making the meditation a little short this evening because I want to allow time for your questions or comments about this important theme. Is Buddhism really that pessimistic after all? Or is it simply teaching us to be equanimous with the calamity, which is life? Any comment in the room? Okay.
Well, thank you for this very important teaching tonight, Ayya. I used to, I remember when I was living in Maryland, and I was part of a meditation group, and I remember hearing this teaching, and I developed a mnemonic to remember those 11 contemplations, and I think it was really effective, actually, and I think it is a good reminder, because it is, it does seem really easy to sort of slip into a kind of apathy, or to rest on our laurels when we think we know a little bit about suffering. But I heard this really beautiful a way of maybe practicing with this teaching in a different way, and it was how it was described that Michelangelo carved the statue of David, and when someone asked him, how on earth did you get that statue out of that stone? He said something like, "Oh, I just cut away everything that wasn't the statue." And so when I think about this teaching, and the thought of getting lazy, or resting on whatever amount of progress we've made, I'm reminded of that comment by Michelangelo, and how maybe we can use this contemplation to chip away everything that comes up that's not nibbāna.
So again, the question is, in looking at the three marks of existence as we experience them, all conditioned things are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and without self. We can use those teachings, but it could be possible to become smug or apathetic or rest on our laurels or not having the urgency. So maybe we've given up some of our clinging so that whatever is impermanent cannot be clung to, because it's impermanent, it's going to slip away. And yet there are some things that we're still holding on to. Let me let go of these things, but later. I'll let go of them later on. But for now, I'm trying to enjoy them. So how to develop that urgency of our practice, but without, however, becoming aversive or I almost want to say without being distressed, without being continuously distressed and disturbed by these, characteristics of all conditioned things. How can we not be paralyzed or harmed by distress, but at the same time have that nibbāna, that letting go, that losing interest, that not wanting to hold on to these things. I'll call on Richard.
Thank you, Ayya. In that translation that you have there from Bhante Sujato, this is peaceful, this is sublime, that is the stilling. This word stilling, that's samatha.
Right.
So he's talking about practicing samatha there. And where it says all activities, that's the sankharas.
Right.
So you may have heard me say before, and you may be aware of it yourself, that when you enter into that fifth formless state in particular, that's where you can really see the kind of the bubbling up of sankhara. And that's your chance to really still it. Now, it can be done from first jhana, onwards, according to various suttas, and including this one. But it's very clear, if you get to that one, it's very clear, how sankharas are forming as volitional, activity of your own mind, right? So, but also where at the end, where he says fading away, cessation, extinguishment, that word is nibbāna. So it's tying this all in together, the nibbāna. If you look at Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, he'll have nibbāna there rather than extinguishment. So I'm just bringing this up to kind of like tie it together with the overall philosophy of how the Buddha taught the Dhamma. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Well, it's one thing that's interesting in this passage is thinking about the meaning of this viraga and this nirodha. This viraga is usually translated as dispassion, and this nirodha is usually translated as cessation. So then even somebody who's a beginner in vipassana meditation, especially if they take a longer vipassana retreat in the Mahasi tradition, or in that Burmese style or Abhidhamma style of, or you could even say path of purification style of meditation, then there's this idea of trying to see the cessation of the phenomena moment by moment by moment. So then in meditation you see the arising, the existence and the cessation of every the smallest unit of experience that you're able to perceive, and then the sense of the continuity or the essential selfness of those experiences can have you can experience them as falling apart, so that instead of watching a movie and where you're getting caught up in the story of the movie, instead you're seeing each image in a sequence like separately, and the continuity of the movie falls apart, and it no longer is the story is the story falls apart, and so that's one way that viraga and nirodha, that I've heard it explained before. And then elsewhere I see that nirodha is described as what the fully awakened arahant experience, and the viraga nirodha is very often coming up in describing the process of the full enlightenment as just like how it is, and the conditions or the sequence that's coming into coming home, or coming to that, reaching the destination. And if that's the case, then those if as a practitioner, if we just feel that we're really, really, really far away from those kinds of attainments, then how are we to practice with that? And I am not, I don't actually have a confident answer to give, except that I guess I like Buddhadasa's teaching. He speaks about the momentary nibbāna, that it's possible that long before one is a fully awakened arahant, that there can be an actual experience of cessation in the moments in between the moments of craving. And I do really feel convinced that there is a kind of learning it's like learning to swim or learning to ride a bicycle, that I can't really become a person who doesn't know how to ride a bike. If I got on a bike, I would know how to ride it. And so there are some elements of craving that I had earlier in my life that I feel quite sure those are gone forever. Even though I'm far, far away from the full cessation, the full enlightenment. But I can, by reflecting and really knowing what it is that those defilements, those pieces of defilement, or those elements of defilement that are really gone, and know, like, what happened with that? And can that same process then be applied to everything? Damon.
Thank you. If a friend of mine is a more mature Buddhist than I am, said the other day in passing that how important wise attention, or she even said something like, it all comes down to wise attention. And I wanted to know, if you could comment on why, one might put so much stress on that particular, that factor.
The factor that's usually translated as wise attention is called yoniso manasikara, and it has the two aspects. One is seeing into our experience in a way which is deep and not just coasting on the surface or the just seeing one small part of the whole picture and then reacting to that one element that we see without seeing the whole picture. And then the other aspect is seeing the causation, how whatever we experience is arising because of conditions, is continuing because of conditions, is ceasing because of conditions. And so then in the arising of right view is said to be depending on two factors. One is the voice of another, and the other is that wise attention. So wise attention is truly the launching point for this entire path. Starts from wise attention. If the Buddha said just rely on the voice of another, then we would be like a religion that had a catechism or a guru or something like that, and we would just put our faith in a catechism or put our faith in a guru and think that was going to solve our problems. But Buddhism is not like that. I know that Maureen's in the room now, and Maureen has said in this room in an earlier session how inspired she was when she had the Buddha only points the way. You are the light, rely on yourself, that each one has to do their own work. So the yoniso manasikara is both it's the launching point, but it's a kind of a declaration of independence or declaration of responsibility, that each person has to do it for themselves. And you don't really have anything else except your own experiences to work with. So then from what's called the voice of another, so hearing some teachings, getting some concepts, getting some different framework to use, then use that framework and apply it to your own experience. That's the way to wake up.
Thank you.
Okay, Maureen.
I've always thought that Buddhism, it focuses on dukkha, but sukha is also something that is impermanent, and we can, you can apply the same way of dealing with that as you can with dukkha. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. But yeah.
I don't know if you would say, this sounds trite, maybe to say that sukha is dukkha, because it's impermanent and it's dukkha when it's finished. That's what the Venerable Bhikkhuni Dhammadharini said about the Vedanas, that the pleasant feeling is suffering when it finishes. They do say that our path of practice does have a very strong theme, which is a pleasant theme. And this is sort of the other side of the coin. So somebody who was a critic of Buddhism who read this and says, wow, this Buddhism is really dark. You know, when we practice meditation and we see our own mental process as being a diseased, a boil, a dart, a misery, an alien. But then it's also true that with the seclusion from the unwholesome states of mind, that piti, or bliss, arises, and then from the bliss comes happiness and tranquility of the body and mind. And so in the contemplation of the mind, we learn how to gladden the mind, how to develop pamoja in the mind, and we learn how to even the very prescription of the breath meditation for the average person, if they don't have some kind of a health affliction. I think it's more usual for people that the breath meditation is inherently on the side of being pleasant. And the pleasant feeling and relaxation, the deep bodily relaxation one can have from breathing properly, then promotes that tranquility of the mind that actually enables the seclusion and the stillness and so forth. And so sukha is part of, you could say that's a general characteristic of some of the pleasant aspects of this path of practice. Nevertheless, if because our practice is pleasant, then we start to cling to it, then we will be aiming for a long number of eons in heaven, but we will no longer be aiming for awakening. But if we have those beautiful, blissful and tranquil aspects of our practice and our meditation, and then we can see become dissatisfied even with that. Say, well, you know, what's the point of this? This is boring. This is you know, if it's just a pleasant escape, it's nothing. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to maybe Richard, are you responding to Maureen? Shall I call on you and then Maureen, or shall I stay with Maureen for another hour?
Yes, I was going to respond.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Ed. The Buddha was accused one time like this of, you know, being only interested, you know, in dukkha as a philosophical tenet, you might say. And he said, no. He says, I look for sukha wherever it can be found. And he said, all the jhanas and the formless states, those are all higher and higher and higher, more refined experiences of sukha. And nibbāna is the the ultimate sukha. So the reason he starts with dukkha is because if you understand the 12-fold chain, right, at the end of birth, old age, disease, and death, it's just the next thing actually is dukkha. Okay, and then from there, the chain goes on going upward again until you attain liberation in nibbāna. So I won't go into all the stage details, but that's described in the sutta. So, but I would like to propose something. As we all know, dukkha, or many of us might know, is translated by different translators in different ways, because they all feel that like some particular English word or another doesn't quite get the full flavor of it, okay, and how Buddha meant it. So suffering is kind of the most commonly known, but dissatisfaction or unsatisfactoriness is another. There's one person who said, one famous monk, his translation was stress, and there may be, some other ones that I'm not remembering right at the moment. But I think there's a slight misunderstanding of what dukkha and sukha and vipaka mean. Du means bad, su means good, and ka means result. That's why you have vipaka, complete, going towards pa, complete, going towards pa, ka, result. So the action has gone to its final result. So dukkha really means bad result. Sukha means good result. So that's why taking birth, it's a bad result because it's going to end up in old age, disease, and death. And old age, disease, and death, those are all bad results. So what Buddha is trying to help us is transcend beyond this samsaric cycle, birth, death, disease, and old age, birth, death, disease, and old age, right? Like that, and in that cycle, and get to nibbāna so that you only have sukha. And when you only have sukha, its opposite becomes irrelevant. So that's why when you go from the third jhana to the fourth jhana, it says no more sukha dukkha. But Buddha in other places says fourth jhana is sukha. So what it means is you've gone beyond the duality of sukha dukkha. You're now like in a pure sukha in a certain way. So once you're purely in something that allows for no duality, right? The other thing becomes irrelevant at that point. And so that's why in the sutta, when it's describing going from third jhana to fourth jhana, but unfortunately, many people translate sukha as happiness and things like that. Well, of course, a good result makes you happy, but just like a bad result, right, makes you suffer, right? And an unhappiness. Okay. So anyways, I'm not saying anyone has to believe exactly what I'm saying here, but you may want to, when looking at these words and looking at the sutta, you may want to kind of contemplate this in the back of your mind a little bit and see, if what I'm saying might have some relevance, okay? Anyways, I just kind of want to contribute that because I think Buddhism kind of gets a bad rap in that result because they fixated so much specifically on this word suffering. Yes, suffering is involved, right? But that's not exactly what the Buddha's thrust was. I think he was just talking about you perform an action and eventually you're going to get a reaction to that, right? You take birth, okay, you're going to get old, you're going to get sick, you're going to die, right? So that's the result, right? So you do this, here's your result, right? And if you do that, well, what have you done? You've committed yourself now to old age. That's why birth is a dukkha, because that result now commit you to this other result, and it just keeps going on in this cycle. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for listening.
I appreciate the reminder that you gave, Richard, about that nibbāna is the highest happiness. And so in that way, this is the path of that is aiming for the end of dukkha, which is the highest happiness. And it's so many things in dukkha, so many things in this path of training. Many important of our ideas are expressed by what it is not. It's like the absence of dukkha, or the absence of hatred, the absence of clinging. And this is the beautiful subtlety of this teaching. And I know that there's one way that Buddhism makes a distinction between sensual pleasure and the kind of happiness, so you could say like a true happiness, or that what is our true welfare and happiness, the highest bliss, and so forth, like that. And we shouldn't, well, when you look at the fourth jhana, it says that it's without bodily pleasure or bodily pain, and having previously gone beyond mental pleasure and mental pain. So there's two aspects to it. One is physical, what's physically pleasurable and painful. And we can kind of like know that when you talk about like sensual pleasure, that would have that kind of like physical aspect to it. But then when you talk about this mental pleasure and pain, this is the thing that's kind of like this is sort of my starting point with tonight's talk, is to realize that there's a way that mental stress or psychological stress can come along from time to time. It can come upon us, especially when we encounter some kind of calamity. Even if we've been practicing for a long time, when the calamity befalls us, or when the comedian in our head is getting into a very big war, something like that, then we are experiencing that psychological stress, or even, but it's not. It's still within the realm, this kama realm, this realm of sensuality. That's what I'm trying to get to. And so even if something is psychological or mental, doesn't mean that you've gone beyond the realm of sensual pleasure, or sensual displeasure, sensual pain, or psychological pain, stress, anxiety, worry, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. All of these experiences. And so then there is a way to I don't want to describe something that's as a professional psychiatrist would say was a mental illness, but there's a way to rise above it. There's a way that, like, even everything that, like, this is stressful, or this is anxiety, or whatever, like, says, okay, well, here it is, it's anxiety. Here it is, it's depression. Here it is, it's resentment or hatred. And so, well, okay, well, that's what that is. And there's a way that those phenomena, whether it seems to be that something that comes from us or something that we could experience externally from another, that when you're not impressed with it anymore. You just, oh, well, what did I expect? This is samsara. You know? And then there's a way of going beyond, which is the real bliss, or like what Satima said before, cutting away the parts which are not part of the statue. I'll come back now to Maureen and then Jakob.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. There's another sort of contrary idea, is that birth is not a catastrophe and a disaster. It's an opportunity to make progress in the Dhamma. And the other thing that's not a disaster is impermanence. Because things are impermanent, they change, so you can make progress. If everything was permanent, you really would be condemned to a total misery or whatever you were stuck in. Anyway, that's another way of looking at things.
Thank you. If you're clinging to something which is impermanent, then that could be unpleasant. Or I think they say that if you have too many changes, so if you get a new job, move to another city, and get married, and have a baby, then all in the same year, a person could become mentally unwell because it's too much change. So there are, but if it's certainly true that especially when we learn to just roll down the river of impermanence and to just allow the flow of change, when we know how to allow it, then it can indeed be not a problem whatsoever. Yeah. Maitri?
Thank you, Ayya. Couple of things I wanted to add a comment to what Maureen said, and it was really interesting viewpoint. But also I was thinking the impermanence part that she mentioned, that it's actually it helps if you look at it from the point of view of anatta, and so if that it's a flowing process, that there is no soul, there is no self. It's also tied to the fact that you are able to change. So if there was something permanent, you're, like she said, you're doomed, you're done. But the fact that you're able to actually change, it ties to impermanence in some way, that it's not a permanent thing. And so it's actually it's something that you can look at it from a positive point of view, that impermanence is actually a good thing, that you are able to work at it. The other point I wanted to make was related to this dukkha and this negative side of things. I've heard Ajahn Sona always say, the question is, how do you feel? Do you feel good all the time? And one can dwell in feeling good for little bursts of time, but can you get there and stay there? And this is really where the Eightfold Path comes in, the Noble Eightfold Path, which actually gets to you to that point where you can get to this sublime state which is this state of happiness. So it is actually, like you were bringing up, it is a path that leads to the end of suffering. But the Buddha always points, in most of the suttas, the negative side is pointed out first before the positive side. It's, I mean, to probably get people to feel the urgency. And so this was kind of the comment I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's true. I see this a lot in some of the Buddhist poetry, like in the Dhammapada. If you don't just look at one stanza, but you look at the whole chapter, very often the first one or two stanzas in the chapter are really difficult and challenging, even frightening. And but if you read the entire chapter, then it resolves on the realization of the ultimate, and the problem is solved at the end. So it releases it. So it's the teaching, creates your awareness of the challenge or the problem, and then it leads you to the wonderful, beautiful sense of tranquil release coming at the end. Yeah. Damon?
Could you say something also in regards to Maureen's comment and Maitri's follow-up? So if we were to accept that birth is not a disaster, it's an opportunity, then could you also say that death also is not tragic? It's a wonderful opportunity, and it's very natural. I'm not impressed with death. Time to be reborn. Be peaceful as possible to have the best chance of your better rebirth.
Well, I have had experience with, I've been very up close and personal with 6 different people who were close to me who passed away. And some of my dear ones had what you would call a good death. And there's still a lot of things that are kind of like gross about what's going on in the body during the last final illness, when the functions of the body are shutting down. But nevertheless, the people who I knew who had the so-called good death, or what felt like a good death, were aiming for heaven, and confident about heaven, and so that was a very easy death. If you want to have a good death, it would be quite most important to really make the effort to take care of your affairs. And if there's anybody in your life, if you have any grudges or resentments or unsolved situations with anybody in your circle, please don't delay. Try to take care of it. And if you, do anything unskillful, if you've harmed anybody, try to, take care of it if you can the same day or as soon as possible. Really take care of it, because that's it seems to be the most main reason why people have a breathless death, is because they have something that they should have taken care of and they didn't. My idea about what Maureen was expressing about the opportunity of birth is sort of, I associate this more with a Hindu type of idea, like the educational idea, that you got to keep getting reborn until you learn the lesson. And the state our condition into which you took the birth is because there was something that you needed to learn, and you got born into a situation that is going to show you the thing that you needed to learn. So that's sort of like the educational idea of multiple births, or of the cycle of rebirth. In Buddhism, we think that it is what it is. We get reborn until we realize nibbāna, and then we don't have to be reborn again. It's very fortunate to have birth into a circumstance where we got the chance to awaken, and a chance for wisdom. Richard, and I'm going to give you the last comment, Richard.
Thank you, Ed. I'm going to say something that might be considered controversial. So if you don't like it or it's not your cup of tea, just throw it away and forget about it. But I think there's a misunderstanding in Buddhism where Buddha says Sotapan can take birth up to 7 more times. It cannot be human birth, because one of the characteristics of a Sotapan is that he doesn't forget the Dharma once he achieves that. And the Buddha specifically says that when babies are born, right, there's a sutta on that where someone, I don't want to go into the philosophy of it, but he says, well, the child, he doesn't know anything, he doesn't have any of these ideas and stuff like that. So when we talk about 7 births, you have to look at the hierarchy of the universe. So there's the lower part of the central heavens below the Brahma realm. It doesn't matter what heaven that is. That's 1 birth. Then there's the initial Brahma realm, but it's still in form. That's the 2nd birth. Then there's the 5 levels of the formless. That's the other 5. So what Buddha is saying is that you've developed your consciousness to a certain level. You're not going to come back here. You have no interest in ever coming back. This is a hell, okay? If you really look at it clearly, I don't care if there's some fun things and pleasure and everything, but ultimately the turmoil, the difficulty, the pain and everything that you're going to have to go through to get through one of these lives, it's like it says here, a barb, a boil, a thing, or that, that's it. He's not overstating the problem at all, So you may go up to the heavens, okay? And there's a sutta where it describes when you go up into the heavens, advanced Buddhists from here are going to go up there and give Buddhist lectures, and you're going to go to those lectures, or there's already advanced deities, Buddhist deities there, and they're going to, they call them deities, but they're, devas, whatever, and they're going to give Buddhist lectures. Or you might meet a friend from your previous life who also has passed away and got up to the heaven, and hey, you remember me? We used to be monks or nuns or whatever together, right? And you're going to continue on because you're locked in, Sotapan, you're locked in, okay? You cannot forget it. There's been a transformation of your consciousness, and then so you might go up through the levels, okay, heaven, Brahma realm, the different formless realms, etc. Okay. And in successive order. So, or at any one of those places, you can make a breakthrough and attain nibbāna. So that's why it's a maximum of 7 times. So it's again, though, I don't think you've ever heard this from anyone. This is my own insight from studying the suttas and stuff like that. It's just not possible to take a human birth ever again. And so the idea that human birth is an opportunity to study the Dharma, the Buddha compares it to a turtle under the ocean for 100 years And then once every 100 years, it comes up to take a breath. And just by chance, one time in this giant ocean, there's a, what is it, a gourd or something, a round gourd, and he sticks his head up through the gourd. That's how rare it would be, really, to bump into specifically the Buddha. Now, his teaching has been, spread out and disseminated to a certain point at this point, but it's still, I mean, of most of us here, how many of us here took birth in Buddhist families or something, or Buddhist culture, or we all kind of found it somehow, throughout our life. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much, but this idea that, well, if I take another birth, that's another opportunity for me to study the Dharma. Maybe, maybe not. But the important thing is to try to achieve sotapanna in this life, and don't think it's a complicated or difficult thing. Even little children at the time of the Buddha, were able to easily attain sotapanna, 7, 8-year-old kids. So, if you're not attaining it, it means you're not putting in the time to contemplate and understand the Dharma. And if you put in a certain amount of time, whatever, and that varies from individual, depends on your capacity, you're going to do it. It's not, that's why Buddha says, if you become a Dharma follower in this life, you'll become a sotapanna before the end. It's not, and Dharma follower means someone who's really into studying and actively understanding the Buddha's teaching. Doesn't mean you have to sit around and read a book all day, but contemplate the ideas, think about the ideas, try to keep it in your mind. Anyways, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And don't forget to practice wise reflection, or yoniso manasikara. Listen to the Dhamma and practice yoniso manasikara, wise reflection.